I want to introduce Bill Kallappa, our moderator. Bill was appointed in 2019 by Governor Inslee to the State Board of Education and Parks and Recreation Programs and Tribal Youth Programs. Bill, you currently serve as the Educational Liaison for the Nisqually tribe. And in this role, you've conducted education outreach to local schools in the Pacific Northwest and higher education institutions, sharing local tribal history and knowledge. You've also played a pivotal role in establishing the Nisqually Youth Council, a legitimate organization modeled after the Tribal Council, which engages tribal youth in addressing relevant issues today. You're actively involved in organizations like the Washington State Indian Education Association, the National Indian Education Association, and the Tribal Leaders Conference for Education. So you have lots of experience to bring to this conversation. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everyone. How this is going to go is I'm going to do a quick introduction of myself, maybe a little bit of background, just so you have more information. So full disclosure, I've never actually moderated a panel before, so let's see how this goes. But I believe my duty today is more shut up and listen and let these guys go. So that's what I plan on doing. So I'll do a quick introduction to myself, and I'll introduce each of the folks, and then I'm going to have them introduce themselves however they want to, and then take it from there. And we'll see where this conversation goes. But I also know that there's 4 of us instead of 3, so that's an additional person. We want to make sure we leave time for everyone to hear. So I'm going to do the best I can, just kind of hang back and listen and fun today with all of you. Okay. First, I want to acknowledge the knowledge that's in this room with all of you, and your willingness to be here in this professional development in this way. Lots of educators in here, lots of degrees sitting out there, lots of years of experience, lots of little children who looked up to you all as teachers. So we want to acknowledge that and the work that you do. We encourage you to keep doing it. Our education system needs good teachers. You all know this. So we just want to thank you for your service to our students in the state of Washington. Okay, so my name is William Swan Kallappa II. My father is William Swan Kallappa, and my mother is Pauline Kallappa. Her former maiden name is Campbell. Mr. Kari, who carries the same blood as I do. She's my twin. She's 7 minutes older. Reminds me of this constantly because I'm supposed to respect my elders. I'm married to Maya Bellin. She's an Escalero Apache, and we have one daughter, Kallappa, who's also enrolled in Koepp. So I have I'm enrolled at the Koepp, but I have other descendancies as well. Swinomish, my grandmother was Swinomish. I'm a little bit Koepp too. And then on my grandparents' side, my mother's side, my grandfather was Keith Campbell and Lena Campbell. And so my mother is non-native, my father is native. So, and my grandparents on my mother's side were Scotch, Irish, and English. So I carry all of that blood with me. And then our daughter has a hard time keeping track of who all the connections, because she has half of everything I have and then half of everything Maya has. So acknowledging where you're from sometimes can be difficult. So I introduce you that way, in that fashion, because that's how I was taught to. Because if I walk into a room and say, "Hello, my name is Bill Kallappa," and then just launch right in, you might not have any idea who I am, but if I introduce myself that way in a more formal manner, you may not know me, but maybe you know my cousin or an auntie, or maybe you knew who my dad was. So it's a better way to connect with the community when you're introducing yourself in that manner. The second thing, and more important thing it does for us in our culture, is it gives me personal responsibility to carry my name in a good way, right? So everywhere I go, I'm a Kallappa. I represent the Kallappa family. Everywhere I go, I'm a Koepp, and I represent the Koepp tribe. So I have to be on my best behavior in order to uphold my family name in a good way, and ultimately to uphold my tribe in a good way. So we're seen in a good light to everyone we come in contact with. Okay? So real quick, I'm going to introduce these guys, and then I'm going to let them go and introduce themselves and talk about the work that they're doing in education and outdoor education. So here we have Jerad Koepp. Jerad Koepp and I've worked together for a very long time. He's a great teacher, so great in fact that he was the 2022 Washington State Teacher of the Year. So that's an honor. Firsts are great. And then we have Jerry Price, Vanessa Castle, and Davy Clark. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. But real quick, before I do that, I'm going to just let you know that I do serve on the State Board of Education. I work with the Nisqually tribe as a tribal liaison. You council is something that's amazing for our kids. They come every once a week and they meet. They have an agenda, Robert's rules of order, the whole shebang. So they're learning about government every day while they're having fun. And the idea is that hopefully we're going to have, well, one day we know we're going to have future tribal leaders, and we want to kind of groom them in that path so they understand what it's like to make a motion, to second it, put it to a vote, and vote from there. So I also serve on the EOGOAC, which is a legislative committee put together by Governor Gregoire to close the opportunity gap in our state. So my hands are in a lot of pockets with education and try to do the best I can. So that's me. So I will let's go here and then down the line, I guess. So let's just start with Jerad.
Yeah, so I'm Jerad Koepp. I'm with Chumney, small tribe in Central California, and I'm a Native Student Program Specialist for North Thurston Public School.
That's all you need to say.
If you want to if you want to do more homework, add a .com to my name. You can dig as deep as you want.
Yeah, I'm Joey Price. I'm a curriculum developer from Muckleshoot tribe. Did my family homesteaded in Klallam back in the 1870s. I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, but made my way back here. Spent 25 years teaching in North Thurston. My first year, the only year they had student reductions, so I got ripped and ended up at Klallam Community School for 25 years. And then went to beyond the social studies, director of social studies for SPI for 5 years, and then made my way to Muckleshoot, where I'm working with 3 curriculum developers, one who's a specialist in outdoor education, and then myself and my partner Sandy Packo, who do the rest of the curriculum and instruction, trying to indigenize K-12 education spaces, incorporate indigenous epistemologies, K-12.
I'm Vanessa and Tom and Kallappa and stuff. I'm Vanessa Castle, and I am a member of the Lower Elwha Kallappa tribe, and I have a little bit of imposter syndrome sitting up here because I don't necessarily see myself as an educator, even though I'm doing education in my daily role as a natural resource technician for the Lower Elwha Kallappa tribe. I work on the Olympic Cougar project, which we are currently doing a youth education project. Program that is for the next 3 years. We just received an ANA grant to do 3 years of education, partnering with 5 other tribes on the Olympic Peninsula, where we are bringing youth out into the woods and teaching them how to navigate the natural world again in a post-COVID time, and also reconnecting them to the land and all things within it, including our mountain lions and our bears on the bear hair snare study, and learning them how to walk that Western way of science. And so I do a lot of outdoor education just on the river with a lot of classes that also visit our area because of the dam removal project. But also I step into the classroom a lot. I just met a couple of people that I presented at the University of Washington this week from on the Elwha River. I tuned in from my project that I was collecting data on. And I also spoke in the School of Fisheries this year during the Bevan series at the University of Washington. So that's
I'm Davy Clark. I'm the program director for the Nisqually River Education Project. My job there is to get kids outside who are going to school, a school somewhere in the Nisqually watershed, and get them doing service learning that's really centered a lot around salmon recovery throughout the watershed. So since the Nisqually Indian tribe is the lead entity for salmon recovery in our watershed, a lot of that work involves getting kids out, getting their hands dirty, getting their boots wet, and really getting them understanding that the Nisqually Indian tribe are the ones that are leading salmon recovery in our watershed. I'll also mention that my path here, I graduated from the Evergreen State College. I had a ton of fun being a Zoltan student in a program that I was in with him. I got a chance to go out and do an internship where I got set loose to just go find a middle school and go start working with middle schoolers, taking them out romping around in the woods. And that was kind of what set me on fire for environmental education. And so it's extra fun for me to be here with him.
Great, so I guess, what I was thinking is the best way forward is to talk about right, native education and outdoor education opportunities. And I know each of you have, this is a good panel because the expertise is similar, but a lot different in what people are looking to our students in the state of Washington and different manners with different programs and those sorts of things. So let's just go, Jerad, and then down the line. Why don't you talk a little bit about native education since you have a really good thing going in North.
Well, we're gonna be here for a long time. So when when do you wanna break for lunch? How about like,
We're
we're
not,
not getting death stares.
no, we still have like a whole full hour for this program, so.
Okay. Well, it goes back a long time ago, and Bill was really there at the beginning of the partnership. So much of the work of developing educational opportunities and co-managing the valuable resource of our children's education takes time, it takes patience, and it takes presence. And so Bill and I, we work together on projects with our other friends in other districts, and the work kept building upon itself over the years. And then we kind of just had this ongoing mantra of like, what next? And as the work grew, then we brought more people in to share in the experience. Because if you're doing something really remarkable, you need to expand and welcome in the community to be part of it. Because it's really easy as educators to have our work be siloed, and then no one else can benefit from it. No one else can shine light on it. And when that work gets isolated, then it also can't inspire other people to do the work. So we realized that not only was the work that we were doing with the Nisqually beneficial to our district, but it was also beneficial to the Nisqually. And if that work was mutually beneficial, then the more people knew about it, then that might inspire conversations and opportunities for other tribes and districts around the state. And now we have a national model that inspires other people. It's like, wow, how are these people doing this? And the simple answer is it feels really good to say yes. We may feel like a lot of pressure to say like, no, or we can't quite fit, or it's a little gray on the standard. But really it comes down to being present in each other's community. I think it's really easy when we talk about environmental education, and as a Native educator, there's been a long tradition of non-Native folks getting really passionate about the environment and how magical we are as Native people. We can talk to all the animals. And there's a fine line of like understanding our traditional knowledge and our land narratives to sort of compartmentalizing Native people in a historical or primitive past, or our knowledge of the environment as a gateway to something that just reaffirms your own personal passions or views on the environment. Because we see very often that the sort of like progressive left environmentalists actually combat tribes just as much as anybody else, because they think that they know better. Or conversely, like we have like this problem of saviorism, that communities like non-Native communities will come in. It's like, oh, we're obsessed with salmon or camas or this other sort of relative of ours, and they want to do this project with their class. And as someone who teaches teachers, I often have to have this difficult conversation with people. It's like, who asked you to do this? And what? It's like, yeah, maybe our white savior card's full right now. And so a lot of the work that we do in partnership is going to tribes with ideas and committing ourselves to that greater work. Because if we're asking for an opportunity, then we need to demonstrate our long-term commitment and how we're going to hold ourselves accountable to the tribal communities that we serve. So how do how do we build that presence? And, in our district, we fly in the Nisqually tribe at all 24 of our schools. We have a district adopted land acknowledgement. We have a land acknowledgement policy. We have a right to regalia policy, and we beat the state for that. So we're making the paperwork side of it sustainable to demonstrate our commitment to truth and healing with tribes, and that opens up more doors. So something I'm sure Davy will talk about is we spend a lot of time bringing our students out to Nisqually. And so we have this idea like, well, being on the river, being on the beaches is really important, but we also need to be with the people. And so I think what we're doing now at the district is a perfect example, because we were realizing like, oh, wow, like we're going to have both all of our 4th graders and all of our 7th graders at the tribe in different places on the same day. So we're probably going to have what, 400 or 500 students out here. And I think it's the balance. So they're going to be out here with Hanford and Davy for the 4th grade Cedar and Salmon lesson. And then the 7th graders, when they get Washington State history, are going to be up at the administrative center, the clinic, the elder center, and the youth center to have a 7th grade travel governance field experience. So we're holding that balance, and everything you got today was the balance of the importance of our ecosystems as well as our sovereignty. So making sure that you're having a balanced approach as you get into the work is really important. And then I think just on a bit of housekeeping, since we have so many people engaged in education, like ask yourself, like how many of you in your districts have a Title VI program? Do you know what Title VI is? Do you know whether or not you have someone in that position who can help you with your work? Because one of the things that happens often is we think, oh, like this, this tribe is doing this great thing with the environment. I want to be part of it. And then I start sending emails, and then we don't get back. It's like, we don't know you. And then we get tons of responses, and maybe you're kind of like bypassing sort of the relationality that you see with all of our introductions. And if like, you don't know that you have Native Ed in your district, that's not really looking good for you. And that may not help you build your relationship. So you might have internal resources that can guide you, introduce you, and bring you out into these places. Because it's not so much that you're here listening to all of us today. What you're doing here is the model, that you're in the community. So you are doing the work, so much of what you'll be hearing more about. How's that, Jerad?
All right. Yeah, why don't you tell us what you're doing at Muckleshoot, and maybe, some other things that you're doing on that. For those of you who don't know, we have tribal compact schools in our state, and Muckleshoot is one of them. So, maybe some connections with that too, so please.
Yeah, so I'll just start. There's so many things I want to talk about that Joe's talking about, especially to say I was first to talk to Nisqually.
Yes, you were.
But Yelm Community Schools did not pursue things the way that North Thurston did, and that is a regret that I still have, is leaving the classroom. I think that one of the things that I really think is important is institutionalizing those relationships and really making those relationships something that's not based on individual or personal mission, but is something that's actually a government to government relationship between the district and, because I started the same way. I was a cold calling Hanford back when I worked at Yale Middle School back in the late 90s, I think, and him showing up and me not knowing what he was doing and him not knowing what he was doing, and talking about Cedar, and I expected him for a whole day, and he left second period, and I didn't know what to do because we didn't have a relationship that was established. But that grew over 10, 15, 20 years. I had his kids through the classroom, and I was really interested in bringing authentic, tribal history and culture, not trying to wing it as the white guy in the room, and actually hear from, people who are actually engaged in the work. And so Hanford and I developed that relationship. We started the first 7th grade trip to the Culture Center, which came up here, and Hanford did what he's doing for you today, and he and his family smoked salmon and made fry bread, and their kids got to see the farm that's been in place since AIM And the fish wars got started, and they decided to be self-sustaining and organic, and so they have a pretty impressive organic farm down here at the bottom of the hill that you all should learn about. But so that kind of led me through. I worked on state standards, and I met Shanna Brown. Some of you in the Seattle area might know Shanna. She's a pretty remarkable individual, and she and I were on the standards revisions task force for OSPI, and she was working on developing the first FTI curriculum, which at the time was 3 lessons in a binder. And so I was asked, just because Shanna and I were friends, and Jenny Hurtado, who was at Evergreen and then came over to work at OSPI in the Office of Native Education, cold called me and said, hey, would I show up for a couple 2-hour meetings to say that this was viable curriculum for teaching tribal history and STI in the classroom. And 10 years later, I was still doing it, right? So it was 4-hour meetings that turned into the 29 federally recognized tribes saying 3 lessons is not going to cut it for us for learning about our tribes. We need more. And so we ended up as a team of 3 with Elise Washinas, who was at Yakima, who did the high school. I focused on the middle school, and Shannon focused on the elementary, and we developed over the course of 10 years the STI lessons that are now on the OSPI website and have grown exponentially since then. And that, you know, was sort of in concurrence with the work I was doing with Hanford. So I got to see sort of the state level, and then I got to see what it looked like in the local classroom. And then North Thurston has just really run with it, right? We have Nisqually flags flying over every building in North Thurston, which is just incredible, you know, and they have the first dual credit AP civics course with tribal civics as well at River Ridge High School. I mean, there's just some amazing work that's been done. And we did some really remarkable work in Yelm as well, which has kind of festered since or reduced. So now I'm at Muckleshoot. We're doing, I was hired on because the tribe was working really hard to ensure, you know, it shouldn't be a surprise to most of us that students in tribal communities have really low test scores, which is what we in the sort of white world look at as the end point of education. And so we're looking at how can we indigenize education, make those spaces welcoming to our students. At Muckleshoot, it's 100% enrolled kids, right? They're not all Muckleshoot, but they're from different tribes and different affiliations, but all of them are enrolled in a tribe. And so it's about 600 students. And I was brought on along with Sandy Paco, who worked at the federal level with a lot of grant writing and work with tribal folks, and then with Claire, who is our outdoor education specialist, who came to us from California. We were all hired on right about the same time last year, and the idea is to completely revamp the curriculum to get away from box curriculum and to get to indigenized, place-based curriculum. All of our units and lessons that we're developing have outdoor education as an integral part of that, getting our students out of the classrooms and onto their land. Some of that's on campus, so we've got our CPE course, and our ag courses are developing native gardens there as well, they've had Western gardens there for quite a long time, but they're bringing in a lot more indigenous plants and such. We have an incredible tribal resource with Cinnamon Bear, and she is an outdoor and forestry specialist, and so we have students going out on their land at Boise Falls, which is just at the base of Mount Rainier, and getting to see the way that the tribe manages their forests and their lands, similar to what Jeanette was talking about with the Nisqually Land Trust, doing some very similar work over there. We have the Puget Sound program. The Crystal Mountain Ski Resort is on their land, and so they have negotiated to put up a teaching yurt that's right there at the base of the ski resort. And so our kids, our 8th graders, our 5th graders, and our 3rd graders right now, and we're expanding that, are going up to Crystal Mountain. They go in January, February, March, and they do half a day of learning to ski and snowboard, and then they do a half of day of Indigenous education, science, outdoor education, learning where they go to the creek and they go on hikes and they learn about their plant and animal relatives. We do a lot of work with Grub and their work that's a lot of you probably in the Olympia School District especially are familiar with, but Valerie Seagrass, who's an internationally known food sovereignty expert, is Muckleshoot, and her husband Louis Ngaro, who's on tribal council, have worked really hard at making sure that the plant teachings are incorporated into our K-12 curriculum. So we're constantly talking about willow, we're constantly talking about cedar and those other things, and making sure that our students are well versed in that. Our students take tribal languages quite often, and many of them are in families that do not have a connection to their tribe traditionally. They've been really westernized and removed from their culture, and so it's a process of incorporating that back into their learning. We have the youth canoes, and our kids go out and take field trips to pull the canoes and such. So I'm blathering at this point, but we're working really hard to make sure that outdoor education is part. And I also we're including Indigenous epistemologies, and because I'm nervous, I write them down. But we have incorporated into all of our unit lesson plans the 4 R's of Indigenous epistemology, and those are respect for cultural integrity, relevance to Native perspectives and experiences, reciprocal relationships, and responsibility through participation or civic action. So that is part of every lesson and unit that we develop, is ensuring that we have those Indigenous epistemologies and outdoor education included. And so we started with social studies because that's the place that had the biggest deficits. There's no curriculum that existed for the tribe in the social studies, and we're going to move that out to science, I believe, next. And then we'll go through the ELA math, the arts. We have a whole lot of work happening in K-12, and then we're also working with the tribal college. There's a lot of experts there, and so really trying to get the kids out. We're trying to develop work to get kids out to the village sites to make sure that they understand that the tribe is not just the reservation, but that the tribe has traditionally stewarded lands all over the Puget Sound area, up from Mount Rainier all the way to up in Seattle. So it's a lot of work, and I'll show that.
Great, thanks. I just wanted to point out real quick that the Nisqually tribe does have a relationship with Klallam too. And we're doing government to government meetings with them twice annually as well. They have received our flag, although I don't know that they're flying right now at this moment. So, Yum took a little bit longer for us to build that relationship with, but we did finally, and things are gonna get better with that as well. So I just want to give a shout out to Yum, and thanks to Jerry, because he's been around a long time in education around Native people. Very genuine person, is that he's approached tribes in the correct way, humbly, and asking for permission and wanting a partnership. And I admire Jerry quite a bit. So we'll hand it to Vanessa, and I'm really excited to hear this. I was telling her earlier, like, no offense to the other 3 panelists, but I hear these guys frequently. Not that I don't want to hear them, I've just heard them a lot. And I'm excited to meet you and listen to some of the things you guys have got going on up there in Elwha with the dam removal.
So, like I said before, I'm not considered an educator because I'm a natural resource technician. So I don't know a lot about what's going on in our school district, other than, we have one of our representatives here who can speak to that. But what I can speak to is like the outdoor education programs that we have going in within my office and with our fisheries department and our fish hatchery, which is, we are constantly doing, obviously, the fish hatchery tours, which is normal for a lot of classes to come down and do that. And that's happening multiple days a week with school districts from all over the state and private schools that come in and do tours of our fish hatchery, learning about dam removal. But in my office, we've been doing a lot of youth education. My direct supervisor on the Olympic Cougar project, so I work half fisheries, half wildlife. Half of my the wildlife stuff that I do is the Olympic Cougar project. And so we're doing a lot of education on ecosystem restoration through wildlife corridors. But also we are in collaboration with 5 other tribes and a big cat organization, Panthera, working on the Olympic Cougar project, learning about movements of mountain lions as an umbrella species on the Olympic Peninsula. but also studying genetic diversity because of the chokehold that the Olympic Peninsula is in by the I-5 corridor. And not allowing for wildlife to cross back and forth and intermix those genetic exchanges. So doing a lot of education about that in the school districts and doing a lot of presentations. You know, with fish, we have this charismatic creature, the orca, that everybody is focused on right now on saving. So we have a lot of money coming in to do a lot of salmon habitat restoration. And so we're looking for creative ways to look into our forests. And so we found this charismatic creature in everybody else's eyes as the big cat in our forest. And so we wanted to focus on that, but also making sure that we're walking in a way that we're honoring our teachings as Native peoples and incorporate, like my job specifically, I feel, is to incorporate our traditional ecological knowledge in this Western world of science and making sure that those two things are braided through all walks of our science. And making sure we're including our language on a daily basis in our research reports and making sure that we're honoring those things with whoever's land we're stewarding, because we're working on the whole Olympic Peninsula. It's not only my usual and accustomed area. I get to go and visit other tribes and other tribal youth and do education there as well. With these organizations and other tribes. So we have a partnership that we just received an award through the Wildlife Society for our collaboration, because it was such a large collaboration with tribes also that we don't necessarily get along with in all realms, politically and such. But so we're doing a lot of education with the Olympic Cougar Project in school districts, but we're also we joined this project called Living with Carnivores with the school district, where we're putting up game cameras near certain schools with outdoor education programs. And we're showing them these carnivores that are living close in proximity to all of these, you know, students' houses and allowing them to adopt this camera so that they can go out and see a bear walked by my house or a cougar walked by my house, and making sure that that education is known because of the way that cougars are presented in the media, as we've all seen unfold in the past couple of months. They only, you know, show up on the news when a bad thing happens. So we want to reprogram them to say, hey, look, they're a part of our ecosystem, and teaching about the ecosystem services that mountain lions provide to our whole system. And so we do a lot of that, as well as with our tribal youth education program. On the fisheries side, it's a little bit different. We're doing a lot of revegetation efforts. We're including our kids we have an eelgrass restoration currently in Port Angeles Harbor. The Navy decided to build this huge dock in the Port Angeles Harbor for the submarine escort boats. And so we took that as an opportunity to go in and take out the eelgrass that was underneath the docks of Port Angeles Harbor. And we gave them to a lab that is now growing eelgrass for us, Battelle Laboratories in Sequim. And now we're able to produce eelgrass and get the kids hands-on with eelgrass restoration when we're braiding them onto rebar to send divers down to restore them. We were also partnering with NOAA with a 10-year that just ended with the near shore. We were beach sailing in the near shore of the Elwha River. That funding just ended, but when we were doing that, we brought youth out with us to see the actual changes in species after eelgrass restoration and Elwha River restoration, because our nearshore completely changed and all of the species that were in the nearshore changed as well. We bring students out with us when we go estuary sailing once a month in our restored estuary on both the east and west side of the Elwha River. And so they're able to see species that are living in their estuary, which, you know, wasn't there when the dams were in. So that's been an awesome project. But so those are the main ones. We get the kids out into the forest and planting trees and taking ownership of, you know, the dewatered reservoirs, but also these newly forested islands on, you know, the Elwha that is on the reservation now because of the large amount of sediment movement, and showing them, you know, how their lands have changed, and now our responsibility to get our hands dirty to help restore that and try to help speed up the process for salmon restoration.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's, to me, it's, the Elwha with their work on the dam removal up there, are like, heroes, basically, to Native people across our country, other tribal communities. Know what happened out there, they follow, they keep an eye on what's going on with Elwha, and they're like celebrity status within Indian country. So it's so exciting to see not only the dam removal, that it can be done, yes, but the restoration following and all the work that the tribe is really taking the lead on and doing that. So it's exciting to hear that. So Davy, why don't you go ahead and share?
Sure. I think I'll talk about three things. One is kind of what I feel like the core of my job with the Nisqually River Education Project is and how we support schools doing outdoor learning. I'll talk about just really quickly three different programs that we do. There's a lot of different programming that we do to get kids outside. And I'll just highlight three that I think are representative, and then maybe just briefly share a little bit about kind of what we hear from students that lets us know when it's working. So the first piece I'll mention is that part of what I think makes the Nisqually River Education Project unique is that we're really working, trying to lower the barriers. We get basically that doing outdoor learning, there's a lot of pieces that people don't necessarily initially start thinking about. Like, great, let's go outside. And then it's like, okay, there's buses, there's subs, there's nurses that need to be informed. There's district policies that says you need that stuff 6 weeks in advance. So part of where my role comes in is recognizing there's so much for a teacher to do to just go outside that we need to stay up at night writing grants. We get the funding to make sure that all of the buses that come out to do these trips with us, we're going to reimburse. We understand that if there's middle schoolers or high schoolers coming out, we're ready to make sure that we can pay for the substitute teacher. We're going to provide professional development opportunities kind of at the beginning of the year, at the end of the school year as well. And so that's kind of a key logistical piece to then walk into conducting the programming so that teachers can feel supported and making it a meaningful experience. I mean, sometimes we even shy away from saying like field trip, because sometimes field trip has this like sort of just one-off implication. And then we want, like many of the schools, I think I just actually was running the numbers, and we have this school year, 7 classrooms that are working with us we've seen the kids 14 times. They're doing 6 field trips, and we've been to their class 6 times to help prepare. Most classrooms that we work with, we really try not to have it be something that they're just doing one program. Because we recognize that you can't come and learn about salmon recovery or a watershed by just going out on one day and rotating through a couple of stations. It has to be something that gets touched on throughout the year, and that students see that it's a really big group of people and different people doing big and different things that are making it happen. So 3 of the programs I'll highlight. One has been kind of our like where we were born at. 30 years ago when NREP, Nisqually River Education Project started, we were a water quality monitoring program, and we still do that. So students, when a teacher in the watershed wants to take part in our program, we work with some landowner. Sometimes it's the Nisqually Indian tribe getting kids out to the Medicine Springs. Sometimes it's Riverbend Campground, just not too far from here. Sometimes it's private property owners that happen to have a big enough area for a bus to park and turn around. We work on coordinating all that, getting kids access to a site that's close to their school that is a salmon bearing waterway, and they adopt that site. It becomes theirs. And we teach them about water quality parameters. They're learning about dissolved oxygen and pH and among a number of others. We practice in the classroom. We go out for a day in the field, and they monitor that water testing site. Often, most schools will do that twice a year. And then within those classrooms, 8 students can be selected to be delegates for their class. And we take over the Evergreen State College for a day in the spring, where students come to participate in Student Green Congress. So we have about 400 students representing over 2,000 students, and they're sharing their water quality data with one another. So they're really coming up with like, what is the state of the watersheds? And thinking about how their water quality sites might be impacted if they're downstream from somewhere else. What are the things going on? What are the hot spots? What are the things to celebrate? What do they want to share about their site with kids from other schools? And that event takes place for kids in the Nisqually watershed and then a couple of other watersheds as well, the Chutes and then the Chehalis. We also do, water quality program, tree planting, which I have to mention because Jeanette's here. We get tons of students out and we're literally at the point where chaperones are coming out and they're chaperoning their field trip and they came out on a tree planting trip. And one of the amazing things that happened this year, we were planting in the Ohak Creek just outside of Eatonville. And we had chaperones out there who had planted Ohak. That it was not just that they had participated in the tree planting, but in the same place. And so they were able to come out there and share that experience now with their young ones. We're always planting with the Nisqually Land Trust. They've been a wonderful partner. Even when we run over their fences with buses, because the turns are pretty tight, they're really nice to me. Yep, that's true. So we really enjoy getting students out. And for so many of them, I mean, we talk a lot about being a classroom without walls. One of the things that's so fun to see when students are doing these programs with us time and again throughout the year, I fully expect when we first start getting them outside, their experience of going outside at school is recess.
Yes.
And getting to a place where we start to recognize really not just as a fun thing to say, but just that is a classroom without walls. That when they get off of the bus on their third field trip, on their fourth field trip, and they know us, and they've gone out and seen that we're putting a lot of responsibility in them. We're not just doing an exercise. We're collecting data that they're going to be responsible for sharing. We're planting trees that, guess what? We really want these trees to survive. This is part of a plan that people have laid out for, how are we going to recover salmon over the next 7,500 years? What kids are doing is directly tied to that plan. So that's our tree planting. And then the last program I'll talk about, because we do it right up here, is our Salmon Cedar Canoe Stewards of the Ecosystem program that we do with North Thurston fourth graders. And that's been so much fun to lead with Hanford and Joyce. A lot of that program, what I'll say quickly about it, is as we think about our role in talking to kids about what stewardship is, I think it's important that they hear a multitude of ideas about stewardship. And they also hear from the people that have been stewarding this area since time immemorial. And so as students come up here, I know that every parent in North Thurston is especially thankful to Hanford, because Hanford gets them in a canoe, they're pulling in the canoe with him. And I've seen it before where kids will start to get tired and he goes, no, keep going. So he wears them out and they have a blast learning tons from Hanford. There's an opportunity for students to weave cedar with Joyce, usually just back in the corner here. And then students are also, we really want to fold in reciprocity into field trips and talk really directly with kids about it. So we go down to, you mentioned the community garden here. Shantae is awesome and goes the blueberry patch for us and gets it all set up for the fourth graders to come and weed the blueberry patch. So we talk about, this isn't just something where we come up, we're receiving a gift when we come up here. That for all of the folks that are sharing culture today, that's not something that we're just going to take and say, wow, great, right? We need to think about a way to say thank you. And some of that is saying thank you. And some of it is also doing some work while we're. So we get out into the blueberry patch and we read around the blueberry plants. And we also get a chance just to talk about the food sovereignty work that's happening with the community garden, and that the students are getting to have that really small piece of preparing those blueberry plants for later in the year. They always think they're going to pick blueberries when they sign up. And then I show up, I'm like, actually, they're reading. But we're going to make you feel good about it. And the last thing I'll say, what it looks like when it works, I'll just share like two things that we do a lot of science education, and in my heart, we want to make sure, we definitely want to make sure that standards are being addressed. We want to make sure that kids are learning pieces of science. But the thing for me that always jumps out is when we ask kids after these experiences, like, what did you learn? And the responses that they give us include community and people. And so some of the things like this year, one of the students told us after student grade Congress, they said, honestly, what I learned having done Congress was that there's just a way bigger group of people that care about water than I thought. Another thing a kid told us after having done a wildlife survey with us was, they said, I didn't like the wildlife survey very much, but I loved being outside. I felt like I belonged there. I feel like life, that's the most important thing there is. And so it's those pieces for me, when I hear kids talk about recognizing community, having a bigger sense of belonging, and just seeing that the world is a bigger place, and there's lots of interesting things to do in it. That's when we get most excited.
Great, thanks. How are we doing on time?
Maybe a few questions, but then,
Okay, yeah. Tough part right now is being able to smell the salmon. To continue on for another few minutes. I just wanted to add, this is a great panel, and we'll see all the different experiences that people are doing in various different communities. I just wanted to add about the government to government piece I was talking about earlier, how important it is to establish that with the tribal council. And oftentimes you can do that directly reaching out. I would have your school administrator reach out directly to the tribe that you're involved with, and do it in a humble, genuine way, and wanting to ask you for permission for a partnership and move forward on that. I think that's valuable. We've done a lot of good work with North Thurston. We just finished last spring, I think it was. They'll be teaching, doing professional development in a cultural way for all the teachers in the North Thurston School District. Every single teacher, and some bus drivers and other people got to participate in that. We cover culture, we cover the treaty, we cover language. Usually do like a hands-on piece. Hanford does a whole piece on Nisqually history. So to be able to train teachers and educators is huge. We also did it last year with Elwha. So Elwha School District has had a professional development from a Nisqually perspective through our lens with our voice, not something you pick up in a book and read about, right? But it's a genuine experience. So I really encourage that relationship. If you can get to it, it's really good. The difficult part is a lot of times the onus on, especially around since time immemorial curriculum for tribes, is tribes are responsible for a lot of districts. And Nisqually, we're responsible to make sure that we're consulting with 11 districts, 11 different districts on, are you delivering on SDI the way you're supposed to? Other tribes have multiple. Some tribes are lucky and just have one district that they work with. I think Yakima, I think Caldwell has like 18 districts or something that they have to make sure they're delivering on SDI. And so it's really, you're talking about limited resources, limited staff to be able to do this work. So if you can do it on a government to government basis, that kind of frees things up and loosens things up for people to move forward. And the things we've heard from both teachers that went through our professional development, both Elwha and North Thurston, a lot of comments like, I've been teaching for 32 years. This is the best professional development that I've ever sat. So because it's not, you know, something you have to have content in education, right? But this is a different type of learning. You can learn something from a different perspective you've never heard or maybe even thought about before. The information is vital to where you want to go and what we can interject into our educational system. The other thing I would add is a lot of times when outside folks looking in see tribes as deficit based, what can we do to help with the tribe? What can we do to bring attendance up for the kids? What can we do to increase graduation? What can we do for the tribe? When really tribes are asset based, and you can see as an example of all the work that's being done with this speaker and prior speakers, that tribes are valuable resources for educators in any number of ways. So we're tribal people are asset based, not deficit based. So that's one way to look at it. So with that, we'll open it up for questions. Yes.
Let's try first. Thank you guys for your time. So I wanted to say two things. I just want to acknowledge that the new bill that was signed by our governor, John McCoy, since time immemorial, it is renamed since time immemorial. It's going to be John McCoy since time immemorial. So you might hear that same thing, just renamed. And I just wanted to plant a seed with you all. I would really, really love to see an intertribal meeting where we can exchange what we are doing, because I am writing some seminar curricula for my tribe and I work government, etc. So I'd really love to see that, so that way we can uplift each other.
I'd love to drive out anytime.
Yeah.
Like, please, twist.
So, yeah, and I emailed you on the school district potlatch that we used to have. And we invited all of our school district teachers to come and feast and have a potlatch with us. And we get about 450 participants per year. It was ran by our Native American students. the idea was to immerse, sorry, hungry. The idea was to immerse our teachers in our culture and to hopefully have them have a better understanding of who we were as a people. I'd also like to emphasize real quick though on your guys' work, and I mean, all of our work really. It's really hard to go into the school districts and have us be taught like we're in the past. And so this works, this kind of work shows that we are all living and thriving nations. And so let's keep trying to do that in our classrooms. And show that, hey, they're still alive and they're still here, because we still have students that think Indians are dead, we're extinct, even though they're sitting right next to a tribal member. Vanessa, thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, the renaming STI to the Senator John McCoy, since time immemorial curriculum is historic for the state of Washington. It's the first time in legislation and statute where the Muckleshoot language is in Washington state law now. So that's a historic thing that happened. I was excited to be there. Lots of other bills got passed on that day as well. It was up at Klallam. It was a great ceremony, great to be part of that. Any other questions? Yes.
My name is Doorbell. I'm from Maine originally, and I was pushing out the I believe that our world, we have all the work all around it. Especially world changing factors, you know, effect, and many students are now in a position where they're more aware of the challenges that they face and they're asked to basically respond to those challenges. Sometimes before they're ready, or they don't think they have the tools. That can manifest in a lot of different ways. It can make students feel pressed, that not empowered, all the things. And my question was like, what are you doing? Are you involved of climate change and grief in your programming and in your house?
Well, like, okay, so like, man, I'm gonna need a lot more stuff for this one. So honestly, like, listen to that. It kind of makes me like wind the clock back a little bit, because I feel like as Native people, we have been dealing with ecological trauma since y'all arrived. Like, we didn't create this problem that the world faces. Capitalism has done a huge part of that. And like now everyone's kind of showing up to the show like, oh, I got this great idea and like how to make the earth a better place. It's like, better late than never, but you know, I think, and so we've been doing a lot of grieving for generations. You know, the reason why we don't, you know, like, you see a lot of the methodology this morning, like you were introduced to the land of the ancestors here. Like you need to be in this place in the original classroom, and then everything's getting re-embodied. Like you didn't learn this from a book. You go and share what you learned. It's like you learned it and you can name that people and that experience in that place. And so like a lot of like the work I feel like we do is, it's a journey of healing for ourselves, even like while we're trying to reclaim and repatriate and rematriate our homelands and heal our other than human relatives. Because it's, you know, deforestation and agriculture and the near eradication of the bison, like this nation was killing our family. At the same time, it was trying to destroy our cultures. So like, yeah, there's a larger global crisis, but I feel like there's a lot of room for science and nuance and scientific advancement and the use of technology. But really, I heard this amazing, I believe she was First Nation. I can't remember who her people were, but she said like the solution to climate change is simple, really simple. Honor tribal sovereignty. This whole morning's presentation, you look at like how much work tribes and nonprofits have to do just to reclaim the land, to protect it. And so like, and then even like constantly tribes are like in legal battles across the country. It's like we were taken away, put into different schools, taught to be like white capitalists. And then when tribes finally get the financial ability to buy back the land to protect it, people freak out and take us to court. And so like we're constantly in like this tennis match of American popular opinion on what's an acceptable like native like environmental approach, and then what's acceptable to the settler nation as an environmental approach. And so I think that getting into traditional ecological knowledge, it's like it helps us kind of address our past knowledge. I feel like it helps us build bridges to non-native communities at the same time. And I think it's for our long-term futurity that we reconnect with the teachings of our other than human relatives as we not only continue our journey of healing, but we are able to do that in conjunction with our ecosystems and to be able to pass that on to future generations.
So with us at the Elwha, I mean, we all constantly are hearing about these ecological disasters with climate change and all of the things changing. So what we do is we end with bringing them to the Elwha and showing them stories of hope, because what's happening on the Elwha is a story of hope. And we are seeing the direct effects of what happens when you restore an ecosystem and put all of that time and work and money and all of the knowledge that came together to build our ELJs, our engineered log jams, to restore the habitat, to do the revegetation. All of those things are such celebratory things that it reinvigorates their passion for also the outdoors, but also like that you can make a difference. So the Elwha is like a pinnacle of like, if you're doing all of these things that are depressing, maybe it's time to go to the Elwha and see a story of hope. And so thankfully we have that, but I think telling those stories of like the hopeful stories that where things have worked and where progress is being made on the forefront by tribes and people who steward the land. I think it's important to highlight those things on top of like these not so great stories.
We embed cultural resilience and survivance in every piece of work that we do at the travel school. And I know that that's done with the work that Jerad and what Thurston has done as well. That's we try to embed a hopeful message. I mean, Jeanette didn't say, well, the snowpack is reduced when you have tree farms, so we're gonna screw it. I guess we're done, right? They said, what is the solution that we can have to try to mitigate this issue that we're having? And I think that Nisqually, Billy Frank Jr. Wildlife Refuge is another terrific example of that. I mean, that was the Brown Farm had built up berms around that land for 150 years or so, and that was taken down. And now we have this incredible watershed that had been reduced to something much less than it was before, and that's due to partnerships between the tribes and Ducks Unlimited and the Wildlife Refuge and such, and those, 7 generations is a damn good strategy, whether you're native or not. Right? It's the idea of taking care of the land and making sure that your children and their children's through 7 generations can be in the same place and experience the same sorts of things it's whether you're in a Olympia school district or a Muckleshoot travel school, is a really good message, right? And it's what we try really hard to stay away from hopelessness. I mean, there's plenty of generational trauma, there's plenty of issues the tribes deal with just as anybody does, but there's also incredible stories of resilience and survivance and regeneration.
I've got nothing to add.
Wait, let me say one more thing real quick, Bill. I think it's also important as we think about climate change, supporting the environment. I think it's also important that this nation grapples with its devastating legacy of conservation. The fact that, I mean, the national park system is a crime scene. And there's been long, going all the way back to like the founders of like the Park Service and American conservation. The whole idea has been to remove us from it forcibly to break those bonds, to break those cultures, and to have this idea that the Western world knows better how to care for these ecosystems that, you know, folks like us we were created in those spaces. And so like now, like, you know, like in California, like, a lot of like my tribal relatives, their homelands like are in national parks. And where are these super fires happening? In places you're conserving, because we can't burn them. We can't let the water run free. We're not harvesting. We're not like maintaining these relationships and these balances. So I think it's an interesting conversation, like how our worlds and our spaces can come together to bring the best of all that we have to like really create something new moving forward.
Yes.
Super quick,
Yes,
2 resources. Number one, podcast from REI that's called Hello Nature, which is about what Jerad just talked about and about people of color repatriating the national park areas. It's really well done and they're short and easy to listen to on your drive. Hello Nature. But then another one, the Elwha Valley, which was talked about. There's a series that was on PBS about 15 years ago called Saving the Oceans. And they've got a video series I used to watch with my 7th graders called River of Kings, which is all about the Nisqually watershed and what happened at Koepp and the Nisqually Billy Frank Jr. Wildlife Refuge. And it's really approachable for kids. And it talks about dams and it talks about the rivers and the log jams being restored and they're taking down the berms. Just, I really recommend it. It's only about an hour long. It's a great place for students to start, just sort of understanding the issues of this area and saving the Keystone.
And to add on top of that, there's a series on PBS called Wild Hope. There's this Beautiful Undammed, which came out about the Elwha River, which is only 30 minutes.
great. I want to make sure we leave room for Thurston and maybe China.
So just to add to this point on the curriculum piece, I don't know the new bill that you guys talked about, but the old bill, the school districts had to consult with the tribes within 25-mile radius, if I remember right. And then the list that OSPI has that for each school district where the different school districts, but so that I know. The good thing about that is it went from a voluntary, you know, talk about that. When you ask the ag question, it went from voluntary originally about 18, 20 years ago, whatever it was, to a mandatory that you have to do this school district. Now, how that's being monitored and enforced, I have no idea. It's not my world, but you know, again, when it comes to the climate piece to it, you know, we also have, I mentioned our state of water, state of sand, and state of watersheds report. But we also have a climate report that we put together about six years ago. Again, the input from all of our tribes. They have their piece in there. Our climate change scientists, that's one of their tasks is to work with each of our individual tribes as they're developing their climate adaptation plans. You know, there was a lot of money in the bipartisan infrastructure law as well as the Inflation Reduction Act, and the two budget reconciliation bills that were passed outside the annual appropriations. In the IRA, I think it was, Quinault got like $25 million, I think it was, as part of their move. So particularly Quinault, we go on the coast, are in the space. We've been automatically doing that in the Koepp. We've been building everything up in higher ground for the past 25 years probably. But these guys need to relocate their villages. Town as a whole, for example, you know, they're having to build up where all their newer housing development and stuff like that above their admin building, whereas lower village, you know, this continues to get flooded out. And the thing with climate, you know, I mentioned our climate scientists that we hired, but we also hired an oceanographer. And the oceanographer is also one of the tasks working with all the different ocean conditions that we have to deal with, from hypoxia to you know, loss of our kelp beds, etc. So all different, because we know climate change is not just warmer, it's not just drier, it's also severe storms and longer, and it's more erratic, and it's causing some serious damage on that front. So, you know, again, if you use us as a resource, I will always say, when it comes to, you know, I know we're called more in these fisheries, little bit of a misnomer, like I said, our environmental protection department is just as large as our fisheries. We also have a wildlife program, et cetera. But you can find a lot of these resources online, or you can just reach out to me or anyone on my team that might be looking for, that may be helpful with a lot of this too, so.
Great, thank you. I'll leave room to Jeanette to add something. I promise we'll get to lunch.
Some of the comments that were just made, so they're commenting about the refuge restoration, and I wanted to give you a little bit more place context. The reason that we are able to be gathered here today, hosted by the Nisqually tribe, is because the tribe purchased this property back in 1999. Because it also has, it was the last remaining privately owned part of the estuary as well. And we already knew that it needed to be restored. And the refuge was talking about doing restoration, but they're a federal bureaucracy, it takes a long time. So the tribe purchased this property from Tony Braggett while he was still alive, allowing him to stay here under the life estate, but with the agreement that when the tribe was ready to start restoring the estuary, he would move his cattle off of the land down below and allow the tribe to restore that land. And so I was working for the tribe salmon recovery program during that time period. And so we put things together. Kenny moved his cows up here and we moved forward with restoring in 2 phases the estuary on this side of the river, removing the dikes that have been there for 100 years, allowing the salt water to come back, and showing people, doing big public events to show people, this is what happens when you allow the salt water to return, when you allow the river to take care of itself. And that helped set the stage for then the bigger restoration that happened on the other side of the river when the refuge had gone through its public process and was able to do that as well. So the tribe was leading that major, that was the largest restoration project of its kind in the Pacific Northwest when that happened. Now, unfortunately, there's some other river systems that have been able, and tribes are leading there as well. Koepp did theirs, and then up north now, Kallappa is Homish. But you are in a place that is part of this story and this history and this story of hope. Because the tribe led that effort. It was based on the salmon recovery strategy that the tribe, working with partners, created. And the one other piece, so, you know, I've been working with the tribe for a little over 20 years now. First working for the tribe and now as a partner. And when we started, we just had this strategy and salmon were still in trouble and they continue to struggle. However, we were just here yesterday, the collaborative group that works in the watershed were hosted here yesterday. And folks from the tribe's natural resources department were educating the new people that have come into this watershed group about what is the latest that we know about salmon recovery in this watershed. And they were updating people. And some of it, the first 2/3 of the presentation, I was almost falling asleep because it was all the stuff I already knew. But the end part was incredible because part of the premise for the work that's being done in Nisqually for salmon recovery is that the Chinook salmon, which is one of the species of salmon that's listed under the Endangered Species Act, that in Nisqually, that we had lost the wild Nisqually fish a long time ago. That through introductions of fish from other rivers, through hatchery programs and outplanting, the genetics of the fish in the Nisqually, the Chinook and Nisqually, are basically the same as the ones in the Green River, where one of the major state hatcheries is. And so all of the recovery strategies were around how do we allow this fish, we've lost the wild genetics, how do we allow this fish to adapt back to the natural conditions as we're protecting and restoring this habitat? So there was a ton of work that the tribe was leading and how to figure out how to do that while we as partners now as a partner doing the work to protect and restore that habitat following the tribe's lead. They continue to do really good science in understanding what's going on with the salmon coming back, collecting samples, monitoring, returning fish, all of that. And in the last year to 2 years, they started noticing something. And they've been doing some analysis, and they've just started sharing it with us. They rediscovered the wild Nisqually Chinook that we thought was gone. And they're coming back, and there's a lot of them now. And we thought they had disappeared, but the work that we've been doing for the last 20 years, it looks like we had an effect that we didn't even know we could have. And they are different fish. They are bigger. They're coming back at a different time. And they're healthy. They had a picture yesterday of one of their tribal technicians holding a 30-pound Chinook. The ones that have been coming back before, the Green River ones were like 10 pounds. They're also getting smaller with all the other things. So I didn't know if in my lifetime, because it takes a long time for salmon recovery, because it's, 4 or 5 year return for these fish. I didn't know if we would see anything, but the news from the tribe's natural resources folks yesterday, that they're starting to see some response, was really inspiring.
Okay, so with that, I know everyone's hungry, I'm hungry as well. I want to make sure that we give a round of applause for our panelists for. Thank you all for being here and being such great students today. You guys were really, hope you learned a lot.